For many years the galaxy was loud with voices. Fleets moved, colonies traded, empires grew. Signals crossed the stars in endless streams. But from one place, there was nothing. Earth, the home of the humans, had gone silent. No message. No reply. No ship carrying their banner. At first, the empires thought it was a small problem. Maybe the humans were busy with their own wars. Maybe they were slow to grow. But as time passed, the silence became strange. Colonies that once called Earth stopped sending signals. Stations once full of life became empty. Entire routes went dark. The galaxy began to whisper. Where were the humans? In the courts of the First Empire, leaders argued. Some said the humans were gone, wiped out by their own mistakes. Others said they were hiding. In the markets of the Second Empire, traders laughed and claimed the humans were weak. If they are so strong, they said, why can no one hear them? But in the shadows of the Third Empire, generals worried. They remembered the stories. Humans fought harder than any race. Humans never gave up. Humans were dangerous. So where were they now? A century passed, and still no sound came from Earth. 5 great empires spread across the human colonies like scavengers. They claimed empty planets, mining stations, and spaceports. Some worlds resisted, but without human fleets, they fell quickly. The empires grew bold. They told their people that humanity was finished. They said Earth was dead. But deep inside their councils, unease remained. The silence was too heavy, too complete, too unnatural. Then the strange ruins appeared. On the edge of what was once human space, a scout team from the Fourth Empire found a world. The cities were burned, the towers broken, but there were no bodies. Not a single skeleton, not a single trace of life. The cities looked as if the people had vanished in one moment. On another colony, fleets were found torn apart in orbit. Wreckage drifted, but the logs were empty. No distress calls, no record of battle. It was as if something had come, destroyed, and erased the rest. The whispers grew louder. Some said the humans had destroyed themselves. Others believed they had left, moving into the dark void beyond the known stars. But a small number feared something worse. They believed the humans had not fallen at all. They believed the humans were waiting. Watching. Silent not because they were gone, but because they were preparing. A story spread among smugglers. One ship, crossing a forgotten route, claimed to see a dark vessel. It had no lights, no markings, no signal. It followed them for hours, then vanished into the void. When the smugglers reported it, the empires laughed. But those who listened closely felt a chill. The smugglers had sworn the ship was human. Still the empires grew greedy. They built colonies on human worlds, mined human resources, and mocked the silence of Earth. The Second Empire even placed a grand statue on a captured human planet, showing a human bowing before their emperor. But when the statue was unveiled, strange things began to happen. Machines failed. Ships went missing. The colony fell quiet. When an investigation fleet arrived, the entire world was empty. Not destroyed. Not burned. Empty. Millions of people gone without a trace. Fear returned. Some called it a curse. Others whispered that the humans were behind it. But the empires did not stop. They thought the silence was a chance to grow stronger. They told themselves the humans were gone forever. Yet in the quiet places of the galaxy, captains locked their doors. Traders avoided old human routes. Generals looked at star maps and felt uneasy when their eyes rested on Earth. It sat there, dark and still, like a sleeping beast. One day, a Fifth Empire scout fleet dared to approach Earth itself. They crossed the void with 20 ships, scanners ready. From orbit, Earth looked blue and green as always. But there were no signals, no ships, no satellites. Just silence. They searched the skies. They searched the surface. They found nothing. Then, as their fleet turned to leave, their signals went dark. Every ship vanished. No wreckage was found. No message escaped. Only silence remained. The galaxy shook. 5 empires held secret meetings. What had destroyed the fleet? Why was Earth so silent? Was it a trap? Was it a warning? None could answer. And so the silence continued, heavy and waiting, pressing against the stars. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, where whispers turned to fear, one sentence was spoken again and again: the humans are not gone. The humans are waiting. The silence from Earth was no longer just strange. It was heavy, like a shadow covering the galaxy. Every empire tried to explain it in their own way. The first empire told their citizens that humanity had destroyed itself, that the silence was proof of weakness. The second empire claimed the humans were finished and that their colonies were now free to be taken. The third empire called it an opportunity to expand without fear. The fourth empire spoke of it with unease but still reached into the old human sectors to seize resources. And the fifth empire, the most ambitious of all, declared that humanity's fall was a gift from fate. They all wanted the same thing: to divide the remains of human space among themselves. At first it seemed easy. Human colonies had no fleets to defend them. No soldiers arrived. No messages came from Earth. The empires built outposts, moved settlers, and mined rich planets that once belonged to humans. On the surface, everything seemed simple. Yet in the shadows of every council hall, doubt remained. How could such a strong species vanish without a trace? The galaxy had seen humanity fight before. They were fierce, they were stubborn, and they never surrendered. Stories of human wars told of enemies crushed even when humans were outnumbered. So how could they simply be gone? That question haunted even the most powerful rulers. The fear grew stronger when ruins were found. More colonies showed the same strange pattern. Cities empty. Ships broken. Machines dead. No bodies. No survivors. Every world looked as if it had been abandoned in a single night. Entire populations vanished into the void. The mystery made the whispers grow louder. Some said humans had been taken by an unknown power. Others believed humans had turned into something else, something not bound to flesh and blood. And some feared the simplest answer of all, that humans were still alive, hiding, and waiting for the right moment. Traders carried these stories across the stars. Smugglers spoke in hushed voices about black ships with no lights that followed them through the void. Pilots swore they felt watched when crossing human space. Many laughed at these tales, but fear spread quietly. Captains refused to take jobs near old human routes. Settlers grew nervous when living on worlds once marked by the human flag. Even the bravest began to look at the stars differently, as if eyes were staring back. The empires tried to silence these fears with propaganda. They declared that humanity was no more, that silence was proof of death. Statues of victory were raised. Fleets patrolled old human colonies. But still, unease grew. The silence did not feel like death. It felt like breath held in waiting. Then the disappearances began. On the edge of the Fourth Empire, a colony of 50,000 went silent. When ships arrived to investigate, they found empty streets, houses still full of food, machines still running, but no people. Not one. It was as if the colony had been swallowed whole. Soon after, a convoy of 20 cargo ships vanished on a trade route near human space. Not even wreckage was left behind. The empires tried to cover the news, but rumors spread faster than they could stop them. People began to whisper again, "The humans are back." The leaders denied it. They called it lies meant to weaken unity. But even as they spoke, they ordered more ships to the borders. They knew something was wrong. In the Fifth Empire, a general stood before his council and warned them. He reminded them of human wars, of human cunning. He said the silence was a weapon, a waiting storm. But his words were ignored. The council laughed and told him humans were gone forever. He left the chamber with fear in his eyes. Across the galaxy, tension grew. Fleets patrolled more often. Colonies demanded protection. Scouts vanished without explanation. And through it all, Earth remained silent, dark, untouched, watching. The galaxy could not understand it. They had taken human space, they had stolen human worlds, they had mocked the silence. Yet no retaliation came. No voice, no signal, no demand. It was almost worse than war. War could be fought. War could be measured. But silence had no shape, no end. It pressed against the stars like a shadow with no source. The fear grew until even the bravest commanders began to whisper the same thing. The silence is not death. It is waiting. The galaxy lived in fear of silence, but no one was ready for the storm that came next. It began at the edge of the Fifth Empire, where a powerful fleet stood guard over a captured human colony. The fleet was large, with hundreds of ships, weapons ready, scanners active. They believed no enemy could touch them. Then one night without warning the stars went dark. Reports from the fleet ended suddenly. No distress call, no beacon, no fight recorded. In one moment the entire fleet was gone. At first the Empire tried to lie. They said the fleet was moved to another sector, but soon wreckage began to drift across space. Pieces of metal melted as if by fire, hulls cut apart as if by invisible blades. Survivors from one transport told a terrifying story. They said black ships had appeared from the void, silent and fast, moving like shadows. They had no signals, no warnings, no light. They struck without sound, weapons so strong that shields collapsed in seconds. Whole cruisers were torn open before they could fire. The survivors swore the ships were human. The empires laughed in public, but behind closed doors fear spread like fire. Could the humans have returned? Had they been waiting in the darkness all this time? More fleets vanished. A convoy in the Second Empire disappeared as it crossed near human space. A border station in the Third Empire stopped sending signals, and when a rescue team arrived they found the station broken in half, every body missing. Nothing but silence remained. The fear became real. Whispers turned to shouts. Civilians panicked. Colonists begged to be moved away from human borders. Leaders denied the danger, but their faces showed truth. They were afraid. In secret they ordered their fleets to gather, preparing for something they could not name. Yet still the strikes continued. One empire tried to capture a drifting black ship for study. When their cruisers surrounded it, the ship did not move. For hours it floated as if dead. Then suddenly every empire ship lost power. Engines failed, lights dimmed, weapons shut down. The black ship came alive and cut through them one by one. When it left, no survivors remained. Panic spread through every star system. The 5 empires began to accuse each other. Some claimed it was not humans but rival powers using human fear as a weapon. Threats filled the air, fleets faced each other across borders, but deep down they all knew the truth. Only one species had ever fought with such fury, such silence, such cunning. Only one species had once warned the galaxy never to test them. Humanity. Now the empires realized too late that the silence had not been weakness. It had been waiting. And now the waiting was over. Human ships spread through the dark, not with words but with fire. Colonies fell in a night. Armadas disappeared without a sound. The first empire capitals began to tremble. Still the humans sent no message, no demand, no explanation. They only struck, silent and unstoppable, as if vengeance itself had taken shape. And so the galaxy understood. The silence was broken. The first strike had begun. The galaxy had feared the silence, but the first strikes proved that the fear was real, and now the truth came like fire from the dark as human fleets revealed themselves at last, black ships with no markings sliding out of the void like shadows with teeth. They did not speak, they did not send demands, they only attacked, and when they moved entire worlds fell in hours one by one. The empires learned what human fury meant. The Fourth Empire was the first to feel it, their capital world ringed with warships and shields proud and arrogant in their power fell in a single night. The humans came with weapons that split the skies, their ships cut through defenses like paper, the shields burned away, the ground shook as fire rained from orbit, and when the smoke cleared billions were gone there were no survivors, no message left behind, only the wreckage of an empire that once believed itself eternal. Fear spread like disease. The leaders of the 5 empires tried to calm their people, but panic filled every street. Colonies rebelled, soldiers deserted, fleets scattered, but still the humans kept coming. The Second Empire gathered its strongest armada, a wall of ships stretching across the stars. They believed numbers would save them, but the humans moved like predators. They appeared behind the lines, inside the defenses, as if they already knew every weakness, every secret path. Before the battle began, when the fight started, the alien armada lasted less than a day. Thousands of ships turned to fire. Their commanders sent desperate calls for help, but the humans never answered, and when it ended there was only silence again. The empires began to understand that this was not war as they knew it, this was punishment, this was wrath unleashed. Every move of the humans felt planned, every strike precise, every world burned without mercy, and still no one knew why. Had the humans been waiting for revenge? Had they hidden in the dark to grow stronger, or had something changed them into something more than mortal? The galaxy asked these questions, but no answers came, only fire and fear. In the Third Empire, cities were turned into ruins in minutes, orbital stations shattered, fleets erased, and still the humans said nothing. The silence was worse than words, worse than threats, because it gave no reason, no hope, no chance. It was like a storm that came and left nothing behind. Soon all trade routes near human space went empty. No captain dared to cross them, no colony felt safe. Soldiers whispered that fighting the humans was useless because they did not fight like flesh and blood, they fought like ghosts. They came from nowhere, struck with fury, and vanished before any defense could rise, and every strike carried the same terrible message. Though no words were spoken, humanity had returned, and they would not stop until the galaxy remembered the cost of touching Earth. The Fourth Empire collapsed, the Second Empire was breaking, the Third trembled, the Fifth gathered its strength. But in secret, even their rulers felt despair because they all saw the same truth in the wreckage. The humans were not conquering, they were erasing, not ruling, but destroying, and when their black ships vanished back into the silence, the stars felt colder. The galaxy understood that wrath had no voice, it had only fire, and soon the fire would touch them all. The galaxy had seen human wrath unleashed, but now the true horror began as the collapse spread from one empire to another like fire across dry fields. The Second Empire, which once claimed to be invincible, broke apart under the endless strikes. Colonies cried out for help, but no help came. Fleets sent to defend them vanished in shadows. Worlds that once shone with life went dark in a single night, and the people began to flee, but there was nowhere safe because the humans struck everywhere at once. As if they were everywhere at the same time, the leaders of the Second Empire begged for peace, but no answer came. They sent envoys to the stars, but the ships never returned. Soon their capital fell not to invasion, but to terror, its own people rising in riots as fear and madness spread. The Third Empire tried to hold their borders. They built great lines of defense stations covering every path, fleets waiting in perfect formation, but it did not matter, because the humans already knew their weakness. They struck from inside the borders as if they had been there all along. Stations went dark, fleets turned silent, and whole sectors vanished from the maps before the Empire could even react. When commanders begged to know how humans could appear anywhere at any time, no one had an answer. The Fifth Empire grew desperate. They sent spies, they sent hidden scouts to learn the truth, but every spy vanished, every scout disappeared, and the only message that returned was silence and wreckage. The empires began to understand too late that the humans had not only grown stronger, they had learned patience. They had studied every rival, every empire, every weakness during the long silence, and now they used that knowledge like a blade in the dark. The galaxy began to crumble, trade collapsed, fear ruled every street. Entire populations tried to flee from human space, but the humans struck, even at the convoys, killing thousands without a sound. Still no words came, no reasons, no demands, only fury and fire and silence. The Fourth Empire was already gone, erased from history. The Second fell next, its government broken, its people scattered. The Third followed, collapsing under endless strikes until nothing but ruins were left, and the Fifth, though strongest, began to crack under the pressure. Even their rulers, who once laughed at human silence, now trembled in secret. They saw what the others had refused to believe. The humans were not weak, the humans were not gone. The humans were a storm that could not be stopped, and with every empire that fell, their silence grew heavier, their fury sharper, their message clearer. It was not conquest, it was judgment, and the galaxy finally realized the truth. 5 great empires who thought themselves eternal had already begun to die, and nothing could save them from the collapse that had only just begun. The galaxy was breaking piece by piece, but in the heart of the chaos, the last 2 empires decided they would not fall without a fight. The Fifth Empire and the remains of the Third gathered their strength, calling every ship, every soldier, every weapon they had left. Millions of vessels filled the void, their lines of steel and fire stretched across the stars. It was the largest armada ever seen in the history of the galaxy, fleets so massive that their engines lit entire sectors with light. The rulers promised their people that this time the humans would be stopped, this time their numbers would crush the silent fleets, this time the wrath would end. For days the armada waited at the edge of human space, their sensors searching the darkness, their weapons ready, but nothing came. The silence stretched longer and longer, until doubt began to creep into the hearts of the commanders, and then without warning the black ships appeared. They did not come in thousands, they came in hundreds, yet when they moved it was as if the void itself carried them forward, faster than light, sharper than thought. The battle began with fire so bright it burned through the stars. The armada opened with everything they had, missiles, beams, cannons, all unleashed in a storm of power, but the humans moved through it, as if the weapons were nothing. Their ships slid between blasts, their shields turned aside strikes, their weapons cut like blades through stone. The first wave of the alien fleets vanished in moments, entire lines gone before they could even retreat. The commanders shouted orders, desperate to hold the line, but the humans were everywhere, inside the defenses, outside the formations, behind the fleets. It was as if space itself obeyed them, and still they said nothing, no words, no demands, only silence and fire. The battle raged for hours, the galaxy watching in terror. Signals streamed across every world showing the greatest armada of all time torn apart like paper. Some alien soldiers fought bravely, some fled. Some begged for mercy, but it did not matter because the humans did not answer. The humans did not spare. By the second day, the fleets were broken. By the third day, the stars were filled with wreckage, and the cries of dying empires. The humans had shown their true strength, and it was far beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. And when the battle ended, when the last guns went silent, there was no armada left, there was no last resistance. Only ruins and silence again. The fifth empire cracked, the third was erased, the survivors scattered across the void like dust, and all that remained was the memory of fire. The galaxy now understood that resistance was useless, that the humans could not be stopped, not with numbers, not with weapons, not with alliances. They were beyond fear, beyond reason, beyond defeat. They were wrath given form, and the silence that followed the last battle was heavier than before because everyone knew the end had come and humanity had not even spoken a single word. The galaxy was silent again, but it was no longer the silence of waiting, it was the silence of death. 5 great empires that once ruled the stars with pride and power were gone, their fleets shattered, their capitals burned, their colonies erased, entire civilizations reduced to ash by the fury of a species that had not spoken a single word. The survivors scattered across the void, hiding in broken stations, or fleeing to distant, unclaimed worlds. Whispered in fear, they spoke of black ships that came without warning. They spoke of a vengeance too great to understand. They spoke of humanity not as mortals but as shadows born from wrath. And yet, even in this fear, the galaxy waited for something more, because destruction alone could not be the end. They wanted to know why, they wanted to know what the humans wanted, and still no answer came. The ruins of the fifth empire lay cold, the remains of the third drifted in silence. The second and fourth were nothing but ghosts, and through it all Earth remained dark and untouched, as if mocking the galaxy that had thought humanity weak. Then at last, when the stars had grown quiet, and the fires had burned low, a signal came. It was not long, it was not filled with threats, it was a single message carried on every channel, every frequency, every language across the galaxy. The words were simple and clear: do not touch Earth again. The message echoed through every surviving colony, every ruined capital, every hidden council chamber, and with those few words the galaxy finally understood the truth. The silence had never been weakness, it had been warning, it had been patience, it had been the sharp edge of a blade waiting in the dark. Humanity had not returned to conquer, they had not come to rule, they had come to remind the galaxy that some lines cannot be crossed, some fires cannot be tested, some wrath cannot be endured. After the message, no more human ships were seen. They vanished back into the void, leaving only wreckage behind, but the fear they left was greater than any fleet. No empire dared to move against Earth again, no leader dared to even speak of claiming human worlds, because they all remembered what had happened to those who tried. Trade routes were redrawn, borders shifted, colonies surrendered without battle. When whispers rose of human silence, the galaxy trembled. The survivors taught their children the story of the 5 fallen empires. They called it the lesson of Earth, a warning carved into history, that humans were not prey, not weak, not gone. They were the storm waiting in the dark, and when their fury came it could shatter empires in a heartbeat. And so the stars remained quiet for the first time, not because of human silence, but because of fear. No one knew if the humans still watched from the shadows, no one knew if they had returned to their home, or moved deeper into the void, no one knew if the silence would break again. But every world, every fleet, every species now carried the same truth in their hearts: humanity was not to be touched. Humanity was not to be tested, humanity was not to be forgotten. And across the empty ruins of 5 fallen empires, the silence of Earth echoed like thunder in the minds of all who survived, reminding them forever of the wrath that had shattered the galaxy.